Since ancient times, human beings all over the world have embarked on an astonishing and dangerous quest. It is a voyage into a land that even to this day remains unknown. A place of fantastic sights and sounds. A realm of sublime and terrifying creatures, where the laws of physics are ignored. It is a quest into the hidden mysteries of the human mind. The search for an altered state of consciousness, a sacred reality beyond what our senses can perceive.
People do, all over the world, ubiquitously in human culture, seek some means to get out of the everyday state of consciousness and reality. And that desire to do that is so common in the human experience that it almost has to be seen as part of the basic human appetite.
The quest for a world beyond our senses is one of the oldest and deepest yearnings of mankind. There is intriguing evidence that at the dawn of our earliest cultures, human beings were already experts at journeying beyond everyday consciousness. In southern France, the walls of limestone caverns are covered with magnificent paintings of long extinct animals, created by hunters of the old Stone Age some 25,000 years ago. But some cave paintings have defied interpretation. Deep within one cave, an enigmatic scene depicts a wounded bison and a mysterious human figure who lies on the ground, apparently in a trance. Some scholars believe this painting may be the earliest portrait of the first human beings to experiment with altered consciousness. The mysterious figures known as shamans.
They are the mediators between this world and the other world, between the physical and the spiritual, if you will. They are the people who can actually project their spirit or their soul into another dimension.
How have the shamans and those who follow them made their perilous mind-bending journeys to the land of visions and gods? Over countless millennia, seekers have traveled many paths. Native Americans often induced visions by fasting in the wilderness or by torturing themselves in rites of pain. And in Africa, trance dancing is the favored way to liberate the mind from the limits of physical reality.
Africans say, you white people go to church and speak about God, but we dance in the temple and become God. The central quest of all human beings is to find some technique of ecstasy that allows them to alter their state of everyday consciousness.
Among the many ways we have sought a higher consciousness, one has always been the most potent and the most perilous of all. Over the centuries, human beings have ingested an amazing variety of mind-altering substances and have seen fantastic, often terrifying visions of another world. Some scholars ask whether those visions could have played a role in the development of the world's great religions. The question is highly controversial, but in one ancient society, drugs and religion may have been deeply intertwined. Sometime around 1500 BC, India was invaded by tribes of nomads from the north. Today, we call these invaders the Aryans. Their sacred hymns, called the Vedas, were the mystical foundations of Hinduism. The ancient Vedas sing the praises of a mysterious, mind-altering substance called soma.
Like the wild winds, the draughts I have drunk have lifted me. Have I not drunk soma? The sky and earth are not equal even to one half of me. Have I not drunk soma? In my glory I eclipsed all heaven and earth. Have I not drunk soma? Rig Veda, Book 10.
They have a sense that if they enter one whit more into this, it would be like plugging a toaster into a power line, that the intensity of the vision, what was being held, would just be too much for a frail mortal frame, and one would just disintegrate.
What was this drug of astonishing power, so reverently described but never identified by the ancient Aryans who worshipped it?
This has been one of the great botanical and anthropological mysteries, because nobody has ever figured out with certainty what soma is. There were a lot of descriptions of it, that it was something that was squeezed from a plant. It certainly sounds as if it was a major visionary experience, and this was a central aspect of their religion.
We may never know whether the great religious traditions of India were inspired by the ancient ecstasies of the Soma cult. The Aryan sacred drug has disappeared into time's shadows. Some scholars believe that in the end, Soma's priests lost control of this extraordinary substance.
Soma was beginning to be used for recreational purposes, and its religious meaning was being eroded, and rather than have that happen to their revered plant god, they simply agreed to close the door on that chapter of their history.
Was Soma's power so awesome that a fearful ancient people banned its use forever? The question may remain unanswered. But Soma is only one example of the age-old use of mind-altering substances in our search for a higher reality. Next, we enter the altered states of the Greeks, the Romans, and the holy men of the Bible, and explore the possibility that even Jesus of Nazareth may have encountered a powerful drug. Archaeologists digging in the Near East have discovered residue in clay jars nearly 10,000 years old. The earliest known traces of the mind-altering substance we call wine. By 3000 BC, the Egyptians were downing countless jars of wine and brewing different brands of beer, giving them inspirational names like Heavenly and the Joy Bringer. At the same time in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians were so fond of beer that they devoted 40% of their annual grain harvest to brewing it. No proof exists that wine or any other drug helped inspire the prophets and patriarchs of the Bible. But some scholars have wondered if the peoples of the Bible used mind-altering substances as other ancient cultures did.
King Solomon in the Book of Kings goes to a high place and has a dream there where God gives him wisdom and advice and information and riches. Now, although we don't have any evidence of this in the Bible, we think it was probably very difficult for non-professionals to enter this trance-dreaming state. And so the speculation is that the priests who attended those dream sanctuaries probably passed out little drinks that would help ease you into a nice sleep that was filled with visions.
It is known that the Hebrews gave wine to the sick and the injured. They also gave more powerful drugs. Even in biblical times, physicians understood opium's unrivaled power to ease a sufferer's pain. There is even speculation that opium may have played a role in one of the Bible's most tragic events, the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth.
And when they came to a place called Golgotha, they offered him wine to drink mingled with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink it. Matthew 27:45.
The word gall there, some have taken to mean opium. Whether it was opium or not, it's clear that what is probably going on here is the attempt to give Jesus a powerful drug that will ease his pain.
Beyond the Bible, there are hints that other ancient peoples altered their consciousness. Among them, the classical Greeks, who created a brilliant civilization revered to this day as a triumph of the rational mind. But there is evidence that the ancient world's greatest thinkers also journeyed to the mind's darker side, the mystical world of spirits and visions. Near Athens lies the city of Eleusis. In ancient times, it was the center of secret rites of the goddess Demeter, a mysterious cult which offered glimpses of immortality, whose rituals, even today, remain unknown. These Eleusinian mysteries were once famed throughout the Greek and Roman world.
The climax of it came in the drinking of a sacred potion, and that those who emerged from that initiation rite were profoundly changed in their outlook.
What was the unknown substance consumed in the secret rites of Eleusis, which brought on dazzling visions of eternity? An ancient text says that it was a special wine made from barley. Could mere wine be the source of such remarkable visions? Scholars believe that barley could induce visions. The fungus ergot, which grows on barley, evokes powerful hallucinations in those who eat it. During the Middle Ages, whole villages went temporarily insane from eating ergot-infected bread.
I side with those who say that the central sacrament in the Eleusinian mystery was a psychedelic substance. By the way, that is one of history's best kept secrets.
In the 5th century AD, a new religion, Christianity, outlawed the mysteries of Eleusis. But the sacred use of wine survived. In the Middle Ages, Arab scientists invented distillation, which they used to make perfumes and cosmetics. Europeans put this new process to quite another use. As they distilled powerful new spirits, Europeans called them alcohol, an Arabic name for an eye makeup known as kohl. Alcohol never lost its favored position as the Western world's drug of choice.
Some people have said that the aggressiveness that alcohol stimulates, and that certainly is a characteristic of alcohol, is consistent with Western values and Western culture, whereas, for example, the more introspective, meditative, reverie kind of state that marijuana produces or opium produces seems more consistent with some of the Eastern cultures than with Western cultures. And maybe some of our discomfort with those drugs has to do with that feeling that this is culturally out of sync with us.
When we return, an aggressively expanding Europe encounters strange new civilizations and discovers powerful, frightening, and tempting new drugs. Drugs which will bring both happiness and horror to the Western world. On October 12, 1492, Christopher Columbus and his crew landed on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola. A vast and unknown world lay before them, a realm of treasures and terrors, of strange new peoples and alien faiths. Among the mysteries of this astonishing new world were its exotic drugs, which the Catholic Church quickly denounced as evil.
When the Spaniards arrived in the New World, they bumped into a huge variety of hallucinogenic substances. And this is quite a shock for these Catholics from the old world to see all of these things that their priests were telling them were manifestations of pacts with the devil.
Some of the devil's work proved too tempting to resist. As Spanish conquistadors seized control of the Aztec Empire, they encountered the beans of the cacao tree, which the Indians made into a drug called jocoatl, in English, chocolate.
Chocolate was mostly taken as a beverage that was unsweetened and often mixed with red pepper and other spices. It was considered aphrodisiac and mind-altering. In some cultures it was reserved to the royalty of the tribes.
Whatever its mind-altering properties, chocolate quickly proved to be as addictive as any other drug.
The first people that got the idea of doing something different with it was a group of nuns in early Mexico, Spanish nuns, who got the idea of mixing chocolate with milk and sugar and vanilla. And they quickly got into using chocolate so heavily that they neglected their nunly duties and did nothing but prepare and consume chocolate all day. And eventually word of this got to the Vatican, which issued a prohibition against nuns using chocolate.
History has shown that the Vatican's ban was ineffective. Since that long ago day, no power in heaven or on earth has been strong enough to suppress humanity's inexhaustible appetite for chocolate. Europeans were equally astonished by another sacred substance venerated by Native Americans from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego. The Indians carried it in long tubes, which Europeans thought resembled muskets.
These are lit at one end. and at the other they chew or suck or take in with their breath that smoke which dulls their flesh and intoxicates, and so they say they do not feel weariness. Those muskets, or whatever we call them, they call tobaccos. Father Bartolomeo de las Casas.
Tobacco is probably the #1 magical plant of New World native peoples. And the belief of Indians is that tobacco has the special property of being able to carry prayers from the human realm to the spirit world. One way they used it was to make huge cigars of very strong tobacco. These were things that were 3 feet long and a foot thick that were propped up on little wooden crutches with a fire at one end, and the men of the tribe would take turns letting all the air out of their lungs, squatting down, taking a huge inhalation of this, and then falling on the ground with their eyes rolling apart.
In the 1580s, the intrepid English explorer Sir Walter Raleigh caused a sensation by appearing at the court of Queen Elizabeth, puffing a tobacco pipe. By the 19th century, all of Europe was smoking the sacred plant of Native America. Another American drug amazed Europeans even more than tobacco. In 1532, 40 years after Columbus landed on Hispaniola, Francisco Pizarro and 168 soldiers defeated the vast armies of the Incas and took possession of the lofty, timeless land of Peru. High in the Andes, Peru's Spanish conquerors marveled at their Indian workers, who labored tirelessly for hours, even at dizzying altitudes, thanks to a small green leaf they chewed as they toiled. Today, over 400 years later, the peoples of the Andes still revere the ancient coca leaf, source of the modern drug, cocaine.
It is used in all important acts, at births, at deaths, at funerals, at weddings, at signing marriage contracts. In the native context, coca leaf does not produce addiction. It does not produce the kind of mood problems that we see associated with cocaine. And I think this has to do with several differences. The first is that the content of cocaine in coca leaf is very low. It's taken by mouth, so the drug is absorbed slowly rather than going into the brain very rapidly as when you snort it or especially smoke it.
While Westerners studied the powers of sacred American drugs, Indians discovered European alcohol, which all but destroyed their once proud civilizations. By the 20th century, Europe itself was in the grip of a horrifying new age, an age of drug addiction. The Andes of Peru. Since ancient times, their majestic heights have harbored sanctuaries of the soul. Where the boundary between heaven and earth can sometimes disappear. Hidden among these towering peaks, one remarkable place inspires believers to forsake the modern world for a perilous journey above the clouds and thousands of years back in time. To fulfill their quest, they must ride mules for hours through treacherous swamps of mud. Those with the courage to persevere arrive at an isolated lake 12,000 feet high, known as Laguna Shimbe. In this haunted, holy place, they will undergo a bizarre and rigorous ordeal, hoping to heal sicknesses modern medicine could not cure. A shaman prays to the ancient spirits of the Andes and ingests a powerful brew made from the San Pedro cactus. The boiled juice of San Pedro contains the world's highest concentration of the hallucinogen known as mescaline. Under the influence of this drug, the pilgrims of Laguna Shimbe begin another sacred journey into uncharted regions of the mind.
When I took the San Pedro, it was a full-blown psychedelic trip. The cactus is that agent which opens the door to another dimension, and the shaman is the gatekeeper to that dimension. What I like to say about it is that it is a very philosophical plant. You develop a clarity of perception where you can look at a person and you read them.
The San Pedro rites offer mystical insight, but the seekers pay a price. As the drug takes effect, some pilgrims become violently ill. To fulfill their quest, they must purify themselves in the icy waters of the lake. They must submit to strange rituals that ward off evil.
Initially, you're asking yourself, what am I doing here? I must be sick in the head to be doing this. And yet, when all was said and done, there was an incredible sense of well-being and of something achieved that you couldn't really put your hands on, but just a feeling of wholeness and satisfaction.
Beyond the mind-altering effects of San Pedro, scholars are fascinated by the antiquity of these rites. Archaeologists believe that Peruvians have been making pilgrimages to this lofty Andean lake for thousands of years. Peru's ancient peoples have left us compelling evidence of an unbroken link between the present and the past. Centuries before the birth of Jesus, artists created exquisite ceramic images of shamans, reverently displaying the San Pedro cactus. The mind-altering cactus was so honored in ancient Peru that artists fashioned its portrait in clay.
What you find is a long continuum running right back to 1500 BC, right up to the present, where the shamans are basically having the same kinds of visionary experiences as we find depicted in the archaeological record.
Could Laguna Shimbe's rituals be an open window in time, giving us a glimpse of humanity's ancient past? Do they recall a distant age when human beings took drugs not for pleasure, but to search for the sacred on a path of suffering? When we return, we investigate how, in the age of science, the ancient quest of the shamans went so horribly wrong. Today, the nations of the earth are fighting a desperate battle against a deadly enemy. A ghastly epidemic that wastes billions of dollars and destroys millions of lives. The worldwide scourge of drug addiction. How can societies commanding the power of science be so helpless against substances which ancient peoples controlled for centuries? Ironically, it was science's ability to create unnaturally powerful drugs that made modern drug addictions possible.
Until the early years of the 19th century, we never had pure, isolated alkaloids for popular administration, either in medicine or on the streets of our cities. All of these substances were by definition taken in their natural form, a form that is always safer and always has a lower potential for abuse.
In 1860, European scientists extracted pure cocaine from the South American coca leaf. To their astonishment, it proved to be a medical miracle.
If you drop a solution of cocaine in the eye, it causes complete anesthesia that allows, for example, a cataract to be removed without pain. So this revolutionized instantly eye surgery. And then people began experimenting with injecting cocaine to cause local anesthesia.
Cocaine might have remained a merely useful anesthetic had it not found a powerful champion, Sigmund Freud.
Woe unto you, my princess, when I come. I will kiss you quite red, you shall see. A big wild man who has cocaine in his body. In my last severe depression, I took coca again, and a small dose lifted me to the heights in a wonderful fashion. Sigmund Freud to his fiancée, 1884.
Thanks to Freud, doctors throughout Europe and the United States began prescribing cocaine as a cure for a multitude of ailments, including alcoholism. In 1886, at the height of the cocaine craze, an enterprising Atlanta druggist named John S. Pemberton began selling it in a potent liquid form. Pemberton named his new drug after its two principal ingredients, coca and cola.
Coca-Cola, the beverage, was originally a medicinal product. The coca, of course, was the coca leaf of South America. The cola nut was the cola nut of Africa, which has caffeine in it. The soda fountain was a kind of poor man's health spa. You know, when you first would saddle up to the counter in the old drugstore at your corner town and you wanted the Coca-Cola, you didn't ask for the pause that refreshes. You asked literally, and the term was, give me a shot in the arm.
But within a few years, a horrified world discovered the miracle drug's dark side. As their citizens became addicted, governments swiftly outlawed cocaine. In 1905, Coca-Cola lost its kick when its cocaine was removed. One of Sigmund Freud's closest friends died from the cocaine habit Freud had so enthusiastically recommended. Freud himself avoided cocaine addiction, only to die of throat cancer from smoking 20 cigars a day. Incredibly, scientists ignored the dangers of creating unnaturally powerful drugs.
Heroin was invented in 1898 and was prescribed for 2 years as a safe cough suppressant that had none of the addictive properties of morphine. And it took 2 years before people recognized that it was at least as addictive as morphine.
Today, science struggles with the riddle of how to control the powerful drugs it has unleashed upon the world. Some scholars believe we may have much to learn from those who still practice the ancient ways. Pablo Amaringo is an artist who lives in the Peruvian Amazon. For years, he was a powerful shaman who took drugs to enter the spirit world and stood face to face with the inhabitants of a reality beyond our senses.
I arrived in this place where there were old men with very long beards and long hair. I saw a tunnel filled with something like smoke, light blue and pretty. I asked one of the old men what it was, and he told me it was where they go to see the being who can do everything, who is all-powerful. I went to look through the tunnel, but when I got close to it, I felt completely burned up, like I could no longer live. That is why I have retired, because of fear. I never want to think again about seeing God.
To make his sacred journeys, Pablo Amaringo took a hallucinogenic drug made from the ayahuasca vine, which grows throughout the Amazon. But he insists that in the end, it was years of self-discipline, not the instant visions of drugs, that gave him his extraordinary spiritual power.
The one who wants to be a shaman has to keep to himself, has to go to the jungle alone to fast. When shamans are not very experienced, they have to take the ayahuasca to be able to see in the trance. But when we are already experienced, when we are very, very strong, there is no longer any need.
Could it be that these men whose lives and beliefs reach so far back in time might show the world a spiritual path we have forgotten?
When we lose the ritual use of intoxicants, that's when we get into trouble. In other words, Native Americans are not dying of lung cancer from smoking, and Peruvian peasants who chew coca leaves are not turning into crackheads. It's happening in this country because we have no context, no sacredness to the use of these substances.
If we ask what is the basic difference between the authentic, genuine quest for an alternate reality and the recreational drug scene today, the difference is between escaping from life, which is the motive in the current scene, as opposed to entering more deeply into it, which always requires taking on the added disciplines and responsibilities and ordeals that requires.
The spirits are around us. They are looking at everything we do. They are always with us to direct us to many good things. the time will come when humanity will have a higher spiritual knowledge, and they will travel from galaxy to galaxy, from constellation to constellation, from planet to planet.
The members are made to feel kind of on edge.
Victims of a mass suicide pact.
One does not simply passively await for the end of the world to take place. One joins in that process to help it along.
Cults, Dangerous Devotion, tonight at 8 on History International.